Good day, viewers out in internet land. Thank you for returning to see Journeys with Jack. We've got a new episode today. Wait for it. Drum roll. Today we're going to talk about Isle of Man. Isle of Man, fascinating place. It is located between England and Ireland in the Irish Sea. It is not a part of the United Kingdom. It is a self-governing British Crown possession. That's a lot to say. As such, it has its own parliament, thought to be the oldest in the world. It's called the Tynwald. It also has its own currency and its own breed of cats. Get this, the cats have no tail. I'm not joking, they really don't. That's for real, or as my daughter would say, for rizzles. Anyhow, Isle of Man, the people like to be called Manx, sort of like the people in Wales like to be called Welsh, I suppose. Anyway, makes sense. They're very fond of racing. They have this huge motorcycle race each summer called the Tourist Trophy, which scurries over the roads in the inland portion and comes back through the town of Douglas. Fascinating. They also are noted for an economy predominantly associated with financial matters. It's thought to be a tax haven, and such. They have captive insurance. They also have other intricate financial investments, etc., etc. I had a great time going there, so let's get cracking. My friend Emmett and I flew over from Liverpool after saying goodbye to the giant yellow submarine statue at the John Lennon Airport. More on that at another date. But we came in via EasyJet, very quick flight, less than an hour, over to the Isle of Man Airport. Shortly after arriving, we exited the airport and got on a bus that took us to Castletown. Castletown is the long-time ancient seat of government for the Isle of Man, and it is where Castle Rushen is located. Castle Rushen is fabulous. I've been to many castles. I've been blessed with that in life, but this is perhaps one of the best preserved. It was originally constructed in around AD 900 and continued up until the 1600s with various add-ons. It swapped hands many times between the Norse, the Scots, and the English before firm control was established over it by Edward I, also known as Longshanks, famous in the Mel Gibson movie. So, the English crown controlled it for a period of time, and then Henry IV, a descendant of Edward I, gave it to the Stanley family. The Stanley family came to rule Isle of Man and held the castle in their possession from roughly the 1400s into the 1700s. Along the way came the English Civil War. Well, the castle was a royalist stronghold, but surrendered to the parliamentarians under Oliver Cromwell in 1651, and hence it was not destroyed. That's probably why the castle is so well preserved. The castle served over the years as a royal manor house, a jail, a meeting of parliament, a mint, and many other various and sundry minor government functions. These are all noted in displays and exhibits at the castle, along with displays on weaponry, heraldry, navigation, and cookery. It was well worth the price of admission, particularly when one considers the views from the upper stories and the ramparts. I could see all-encompassing, out to the mountains, out to the ocean, into the old town, the old church steeple in the town, the giant bird statue in the town, the estuary, the harbor, etc. After the better part of an hour, we exited and went directly across the street, and I'm not joking, it's very close across the street, to the Castle Arms pub. Now, the pub is a unit of society in Isle of Man. It is a very well-attended institution. In fact, the Castle Arms nickname is the Glue Pot. It was so named by several wives who noticed that their husbands would go there and seem to get stuck and never come back home. Well, it does have an allure, I'll admit that. But when you exit this building, you need to be very careful, because when you step out the front door, you are stepping literally into the road at a curve. So look both ways, no joke. Well, after being there and visiting, we noticed that we saw the symbol of Isle of Man on the pint of bitter that we decided to have. It was called Oakles. That's a local brand. So I brought this little show and tell item right here. This is an Oakles beer mat. And so up here, I'm going to try to grab this a little bit better. This is the Triskelion. which is the symbol of Isle of Man. As you can see, it's 3 legs with feet on each leg, and as we found out later, this denotes that whichever way you throw it, you land on your feet. Such would be a motto for the people that live on the Isle of Man. Curiously, the triskelion is used in other societies as well. In fact, it is one of the symbols for the city of Naples, Italy. Leaving the pub, we walked down to the town square and looked at the very moving monument to those who passed in the First World War. This is a giant obelisk covered with names, which attest to the carnage of that conflict and how costly it was for the many different villages and towns throughout England. Walking across the square, we went to the bus stop adjacent to the post office and sat down under the covering, which was very useful as it started to mist at the time. The bus service is excellent on Isle of Man. I've got to put a shout out to them because they are so reliable, so efficient, so affordable. They are also very thoughtful. They have covered bus stops with the timetables of the buses, which they seem to run rather well on time, posted inside the covered area, and then on the front of the bus it has the destination so that you can't get lost. We were able to get on the bus and ride back down to Douglas. Now, we ultimately wound up riding the bus from the airport to Castletown, Castletown to Douglas, and then the next day leaving Douglas to go back to the airport. All of this we did for under £5 a person. What a bargain. Anyway, we reached Douglas that afternoon late, and the bus driver was very helpful. As we pulled up to the terminal, he showed us how to walk from there to the marina. By prior arrangement, I had my local yacht club in the United States contact the Douglas Bay Yacht Club to see if we could visit. They were most welcoming and accommodating, and indeed, we made it on a night when they had karaoke. It was lots of fun. They had cake and karaoke. It was great fun, and we got into the musical mood. So, having done that, we decided we'd get off onto our next quest. So Emmett and I left the yacht club, and armed with some doner kebab, we began walking towards the promenade along the seafront to see a statue made famous by the most musical and lyrical folks to hail from the Isle of Man. Now, the Isle of Man is featured in a song by The Who, which mentions a gentleman that lived in the sand on the Isle of Man, but the real band that is associated with the Isle of Man are the Brothers Gibb, perhaps better known to you as the Bee Gees. So they were born on the Isle of Man and then left and grew up in Australia. We found the statue and paid our respects to Barry, Robin, and Maurice, and noted that they were festooned about with scarves which read, "Staying Alive." How appropriate. From there we walked down the beautiful promenade, admiring the beach and the breakers until we reached our bed and breakfast known as Et Caledonia. Unusual name, but such it is. Along that waterfront there are lots and lots of bed and breakfast hotels that look to be built in Victorian times. The Isle of Man was a favorite Victorian seafront destination for vacation amongst the people living in the United Kingdom. Well, the next morning we got up and polished off a breakfast of eggs and bacon and sausage and baked beans and mushroom and tomato. I started to call it a typical English breakfast, but it wasn't. It was a typical Isle of Man breakfast. And then we had a stroke of great fortune that we met a gentleman named Dave who had overheard us talking to the owner of the hotel. Dave was a local from Isle of Man who recognized immediately that we were clueless American tourists and decided to take us under his wing. He had a car and told us he'd drive us around and show us a few sights. We immediately took advantage of his offer, and what followed was absolutely fabulous. First Dave drove us up to the Great Laxey Wheel. The Great Laxey Wheel is the oldest continuously operating water wheel in the world. It is about 72 feet high, painted a brilliant red and white color on a hillside outside the town of Laxey. It was used to remove water by pump from a mining operation nearby that was in force up until about 1929. They mined tin, silver, lead, copper, and other minerals from the hillside and surrounding area. Subsequent to seeing the Great Laxey Wheel, Dave drove us up to the next big city, if one can call it such, in Isle of Man, which is Ramsey. It's kind of the second city of the island and way up north. Beautiful, picturesque town with lovely views out over the Irish Sea. Next, he took us along the road race site of the Tourist Trophy. Now, the Tourist Trophy road race goes up and over hills and dales through rural Isle of Man, along places where sheep and cattle are being herded and pastured, etc. And he took us up to the top of Mount Snaffle. From Mount Snaffle, you can look out over the ocean and see Scotland, Wales, and England in one direction, Ireland in another. I was thankful for Dave as he could point out which way to look for the various countries because I would have been clueless. Nonetheless, subsequently, Dave took us back down to Douglas to the grandstand for the Tourist Trophy race. Here we saw the start line, which apparently doubles as the finish line as well, or so I was given to understand. And then we went around the various areas where they work on the bikes, etc., I guess the pits, etc. And then Dave was kind enough to take us to the other side of Douglas to the promontory which looked out over the bay. From this vantage point, you can see Conister Rock and the Tower of Refuge. These are out in the bay of Douglas, and in days past there would be shipwrecks upon Conister Rock. Hence, the Tower of Refuge was built so that those, if they wrecked on the rock, can have a place of shelter overnight. This was due to the work of a gentleman named William Hillary, who actually was the founder of the Royal Lifeboat Institute. Now, the Royal Lifeboat Institute still exists and serves Ireland, the United Kingdom, the Channel Islands, and Isle of Man. There's a statue to Mr. Hillary, or I should say Sir William Hillary, on the promontory there outside of Douglas. We had a great time with our friend Dave, and he was kind enough also to take us by the local Tesco. Tesco is the supermarket that you find throughout the United Kingdom and on Isle of Man, and they have excellent chocolate. My son loves it, so we picked up a bit of chocolate, both the dark and the lighter kind, for some loved ones. And Dave suddenly had to bid us adieu as he had to pick up some family, so we were most thankful to him and grateful that he took us under his wing. So subsequent to seeing Dave off, we stopped off at a pub for a pint, and they gave me the Oakles towel that I showed you before. Then we reached the bus and rode on to the airport. Now, I'd like to observe that we did not go to see the ruins of Peel Castle, nor take the electric tourist train up to Laxey, nor see the Camera Obscura, which are some other sites on Isle of Man. The Camera Obscura is actually an observatory utilizing mirrors so that you can see further to the mainland of the United Kingdom from the island. Yes, I would have liked to have tried that, but perhaps we get to go back later one day. All in all, it was a fantastic visit, and I noted that the local people were very friendly and thought that we as Americans coming to visit outside of the Tourist Trophy race season were quite an anomaly. Thanks very much for tuning in. I've got some photographs and other memorabilia for you at our website and Instagram. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next journey.